It was fatal to Ukraine and potentially fatal to Europe. There's been a game being played for some time now that goes, when we talk about Russia and the Ukraine-Russian conflict, and it really is the collective West against Russia, most people speak of the battlefield, the physical battlefield where forces confront one another. People who understand war understand its extension of politics by other means, so they have to bring into the political spectrum who are supporting Russia politically, China and others. And so it's been this delicate balancing game. And Putin has been a master of this, an absolute master of this. This is why Russia is winning the war on all fronts. But the problem is that the British and the Ukrainians recognize that if they play Putin's game, they're going to lose. So they have been engaged in a different kind of war called mental war. If you want to learn about mental war, look up Andrei Ilnitsky, former lieutenant general advisor to Sergei Shoigu, who was Minister of Defense. He has written the definitive work on mental war. Mental war is using information, weaponizing it in a way that isn't just about changing narratives. It's about getting into the minds of people, creating defeatism, causing societies to collapse from within. And most people, when evaluating this, have been saying, oh, well, the Ukrainians and the British are playing mental war, creating a narrative that resonates amongst the Russian liberal elite. There are no Russian liberal elites left. They're done. They're finished. The stake has been put through. But by throwing it out there to the liberal elite, that's a deflection because it bounces off them onto the more conservative people who are staunch supporters of Putin, believe in this war and want this war to end in a decisive Russian victory. And by promoting the idea that Russia's not winning this war, even though we know Russia is winning this war, but by creating, for instance, drone strikes that appear to be more effective than they are, drone strikes that appear to make Vladimir Putin look impotent, drone strikes which are a daily insult to the Russian people, drone strikes that allow Zelensky to say, we're winning, we've transferred this, the information war. Even though the information war is wrong, perceptions create their own realities. And what's happening in the social media space, the information war space, is that it's bouncing into Russia, resonating back on a group of people who are starting to believe this. This message is resonating. They're saying, we're not winning, therefore we are weak. Putin isn't weak. And this is a problem for Russia. Now, Putin has not been wanting to shift. He says we can ride this storm out. The fatal mistake was made by the British and the Ukrainians getting ready to double down on stupid, meaning the British are now providing 16 to 20,000 strategic strike drones to Ukraine for a big campaign next month that Zelensky has announced. He's talked about up to 6,000 drones a day striking the strategic depth of Russia. And if that happens and Putin stays the course, there will be domestic unrest in Russia. There is already people saying enough is enough. But Putin had trouble pulling the plug. Just like how does he deal with sanctions? He can't divorce from the West. But when the West divorced from him, it was the greatest favor ever done. This attack on this college it resonated with the Russian people more than anything. Look, history will always show that there's events that happen. This is not the worst atrocity that the Ukrainians have ever committed against the Russians. The worst is what happened in Kursk, where the West isn't comprehending that hundreds of elderly Russians were slaughtered by the Nazis when they invaded Kursk, butchered them in the basements, raped them, murdered them, filmed it. It's all on film. The Russians have it all. That was horrible. But even that didn't get Putin to change course. The murder of these 21 college-age students by the Ukrainians in their sleep is the straw that broke the camel's back. This has resonated like no other atrocity has resonated with the Russian people, and they are done, finished. They are demanding action, and now Vladimir Putin's going to deliver, because if he doesn't, June's coming up. The St. Petersburg International Economic Forum convenes in a week. The Ukrainians are ready to attack that. That is second only to Victory Day in terms of, prestige. Russia can't allow this to happen. They can't allow 6,000 drones to flood their airspace. Russia needs to seize the initiative, and this event has empowered Vladimir Putin politically to change the dynamic of this conflict, which he is getting ready to do. Yes, he launched a brief retaliatory strike. Yes, he introduced Oreshnik, but we're going to get to know Mr. Oreshnik very much better, more intimately in the coming days and weeks. This isn't a one-of strike. The Russians are talking about systemic and sustained. That means they're going to be comprehensively taking out Ukraine's leadership targets, decision-making targets, industrial targets on a sustained basis. This is now a campaign of national destruction, and it will continue until Ukraine unconditionally surrenders. Negotiations are off the table. This is it. This is the death march. This is the end of Ukraine. And here is an important thing for people to understand. Sergei Karaganov, a very important political scientist and advisor to Vladimir Putin, has been preaching the hard line, not just towards Ukraine, but towards Europe. And for Putin to make this decision, understand that it's a hair trigger now for Russia to escalate into Europe. This is why there's an emergency meeting ongoing in the Baltic states, because they understand what just happened. And if they play stupid games, they will win the dumbest of prizes, which will be the eradication of Latvia, Lithuania, and perhaps Estonia. The Russians are done playing games. This is a war that could easily transfer into Europe, especially if the Europes continue to say stupid things like, we want a war with Russia. We are preparing for a war with Russia. We are building weapons to strike Russia. Putin's done. I'm just trying to say Putin has changed the paradigm. He's no longer playing on the script that was in effect a week ago. It's a brand new script. It's a comprehensive script, and it's a script that's driving towards only one end, and that is the physical destruction of Ukraine in its current manifestation and anything that seeks to come to the assistance of Ukraine. Ukraine is dead. Finished.
And anything that seeks to come to the assistance of Ukraine, it's like you're reading my mind. Is it more likely than not that MI6 or CIA targeted that school for the Ukrainians? And if it is, surely the Kremlin knows that.
Well, first of all, the Kremlin does know it. Let me give you my assessment of what happened here. This is a MI6-driven campaign, and they are getting ready to launch a strike, a massive strike of up to 6,000 drone strikes. That's 6,000 impact points. I'm an old targeteer. So when I hear an impact point, that means that somebody like me, an intelligence officer, has studied the target, has determined the viability of the target, determined what weapons need to hit the target, et cetera. It is a painstaking process, especially if it's going to be done in accordance with the rule of law. But when you go from, the Ukrainians hitting a couple hundred targets, many of them are repeat targets, to 6,000, to expand that goes beyond the capacity of Ukraine and MI6 to generate targets. So enter Palantir. The CEO of Palantir has come in working with the British, with the CIA, and the Ukrainians to generate targets using artificial intelligence. This is the same trap that we ran into with the girls' school in Iran, Minab. It was a AI-generated target that went outside the framework of normal checks and balances. This school in Lugansk is an AI-generated target. It's a target that the computer system said is military affiliated, because when they did a scan of what's the Russian military do, they came up with a competition, a civilian competition, by the way, where students wear military clothes. It's like people playing paintball, but it's more official. But they're not military people. They're playing it's a competition, and they have photographs of students from the college, not the teacher's college, by the way, sort of a business school, a different college, different location, wearing military uniforms. And the computer said military, school, strike. And that went in there, and the map said school, teacher. They didn't, it said Starbell's College. And so the Ukrainians said strike, and they struck it. They struck it with 4 FP1 drones. These are, airplane-like drones. Now you're going to say, wait a minute, Scott, they said they came in with multiple waves, 16 strikes. Yes, you see, because each of the 4 had air-to-ground rockets attached to them. The eyewitnesses speak of rocket fires, rockets coming in. Well, if it's an FP1 drone, that ain't a rocket. That goes, this is boom, boom, boom. 4 times they came in, struck, flew around, boom. That means there's eyes on target. Now, we know there's a Starlink on one of these, which is broadcasting the imagery through a command drone built by the British back to the Ukrainians who were watching the strike, directing the rockets, multiple waves, striking the girls as the survivors who get out, try to run down the stairs, exit the building. No, boom, boom, they're dead. No survivors. 4 times, and then the 4 drones hit the site. This was done under direct visual supervision of the Ukrainians and their MI6 masters, and the CIA is cognizant of it. It's not just Ukraine that murdered these people. It's the British, hint, Russia, Oreshnik, MI6 headquarters, Vauxhall, London, legitimate target, and the CIA. Now, I'm not recommending you strike the United States because that could lead to a global nuclear war, but you should understand the CIA is guilty. The President of the United States should understand that the CIA is guilty. Maybe he doesn't know, maybe he's not aware, but the fact is the Russians know. They have all the data necessary. This is why that first strike that went in the other day, it took out FP1 production facilities. Everybody's like, oh no, you struck a mall. Oh no, you struck a museum. You struck this. Well, what do you think the Ukrainians are doing, ladies and gentlemen? They've bragged about taking FP1 production and putting it into halls in museums, in schools, they put them in gymnasiums and schools. They put them in the basements of museums. All these places struck by the Russians are known FP1 production facilities, and that's why Russia hit them. And now that they've taken out the FP1 drone, I think they took out some of the leadership involved in that drone strike, maybe the people watching that drone strike. Now they're going to come in for the kill. The eradication of Latvia, Lithuania, and perhaps Estonia. The Russians are done playing games. This is a war that could easily transfer into Europe, especially if the Europeans continue to say stupid things like, we want a war with Russia. We are preparing for a war with Russia. We are building weapons to strike Russia. You know, Putin's done, I'm just trying to say, Putin has changed the paradigm. He's no longer playing on the script that was in effect a week ago. It's a brand new script. It's a comprehensive script, and it's a script that's driving towards only one end, and that is the physical destruction of Ukraine